Welcome, everyone, to RB1 Fantasy Football Podcast, part of the Fake Teams Podcast channel. I am the consummate professional, first ranking officer of the Terry McLaurin Stan Club, Grand Marshal of the Alvin Kamara Apology Parade, and BFFs with the Oracle, your humble host, Pete Rogers. And I am joined by just one of the guys, Sunken Lieutenant of the SS Deshaun Jackson, loather of Adam Gase, doubter of John Gruden's Jacobs handle shtick, and thinks your favorite team is run by donkeys, Ginger Stubble Man, Nick Bodiford. How you doing today?
I'm good, Pete. How are you?
I am well. It makes sense for such a chaotic NFL season and like couple of weeks that recording this show would also be equally as chaotic for us as we've been trying to figure out what time to do it, who's going to be on the show. So listeners, you are just getting the Nick and I treatment this week.
That's right. Yeah, we're going to try to bring stability to your lives. Hopefully you guys read the rundown and everybody started Chase Claypool, because somehow I managed to call his rushing touchdown, which I am still really proud of myself for doing.
Nick is going to be riding high on that one for the rest of the season. All right. Well, we're going to jump into the our starts and sets for week 6. We got a lot to talk about. Obviously, I mean, there's some news that we're going to get to. Little running back shakeup, but we'll talk about that when we get to that game. So let's start off though with the first games on Sunday. The NFL really just kind of pooping all over us with like 18 different morning games on Sunday and then 2 afternoon games, one of which is like just the trash ass. Isn't it like the Giants, or no, it's the Jets Miami? Isn't Jets Miami like one of the lone afternoon games?
Yeah, I think you might be right. I'm having trouble finding it, but yeah, not fun.
What are we doing here, NFL? All right, well, let's start. Chicago Bears heading to Carolina to take on the Panthers. For me, this is the game. We saw David Montgomery put together a really solid game against the Buccaneers back in week 5. And we know when you see a running back facing the Carolina Panthers, you immediately fire them up. And so I think I like David Montgomery this week to continue the kind of success we saw him put forward back in week 5.
Yeah, you said it. The Panthers are like a fire the cannons defense, where if anybody's really in a slump and they have any kind of prominent role on the offense, this is the week that you can either try to sell high on them or just start them with confidence. Todd Gurley finally looked like Todd Gurley of old last week, over 121 rushing yards, hit pay dirt too, and added some passing game usage, which was not really the case for him this year. But just looking back through other box scores, I mean, there were so many backs this year, Chase Edmonds, Eckler, Fournette, Jacobs, that have all like smashed like 100 yards or a touchdown kind of thing, pretty much guaranteed. So I was confident ranking Montgomery up in the top 12 this week. He is I believe the number 12 overall.
Yeah.
Probably the highest he'll get this year.
I think that's crystal clear start if you've got him. I would be tepid on Robbie Anderson and DJ Moore this week. I know they both had big games last week, which we expected because they were playing the Falcons. But the Bears defense is legit. And we've seen, the Buccaneers passing game struggled against them last week. We've seen other passing games struggle. So I don't know if this is quite the fire up Robbie Anderson like a wide receiver 1 this week. I just did my wide receiver rankings. And you would think, Nick, I would have these ready and waiting in front of me, but I am just going to stall until I get them up. Robbie Anderson, I have wide receiver 20, DJ Moore, wide receiver 21. So mid-tier wide receiver 2s this week for me. So
with Robbie Anderson's usage, I think you just roll with him. 8, 10, 5, 11, 13. That kind of usage is just really tough to beat. And it's possible that we just see more of a floor game out of him. But I still think for me, he's going to basically have like a hard stop at wide receiver 12 overall were I to rank them. DJ Moore, though, I totally get. They've totally switched expected roles. He's the downfield receiver, not Anderson. And something that I missed on earlier this year, the ETR guys were talking about this on one of their free podcasts. Robbie Anderson was coached by Matt Rule in college, and I totally missed that. And Teddy Bridgewater and him were on the Jets together. And like in the preseason,
the Jets one, I didn't even think about.
And so, yeah, I mean, the stones were cast. We could have seen this, and I missed both of those. But it makes a ton of sense that Rule knew how to use him, and now this guy's not just a downfield guy; he can do everything. So, I'm still rolling with him as a wide receiver one, but he'll be like the very bottom of that tier. But DJ Moore, yeah, he seems to be as matchup dependent as Teddy Bridgewater is, who goes from like top 12 option to like number 24 kind of a thing.
Yeah. There are quarterbacks who I'm sure are available in your league that you should be streaming this week if you have Teddy Bridgewater. If you had success with him last week, good for you, but don't rely on it this week. Let's move on to the Cincinnati Bengals heading to the Indianapolis Colts to take on the Colts, heading to the Indianapolis to play the Colts. And I don't know about you. I mean, let's start with the Bengals, because this Colts defense, man, is like top 5 in every category at limiting fantasy points to positions. They're number 1 against quarterbacks, number 2 against running backs, like number 6 or 5 against wide receivers, and number 1 against tight ends. Is there anyone on the Bengals who you would comfortably start this week?
So I think, I'm just double checking the box scores. The one thing that you can see, Laviska Shenault, touchdown, Braxton Berrios, touchdown, Allen Robinson runs a lot of routes in the slot, touchdown. I think that Indianapolis does struggle to cover the slot as proficiently as it does on the outside. I also think that they've benefited from matchups to some degree. Sure. Jaguars in week 1, and Jets and Mitchell Trubisky Bears through the first 3 weeks. I think that they're a really good unit, but I think that as the season progresses, we might see them humanized a little bit. So that said, Tyler Boyd, I think he stunk it up last week, but still would be going back to him as a slot option this week. AJ Green, did you see him after they turned the ball over?
Don't tell me a damn thing about AJ Green. AJ Green is dead to me until he catches a ball successfully 20 yards down the field.
So there you go. So for that reason, I do think that the 3 receiver set is like locked in. I think you just kind of drop expectations for these guys like by a category. So if you had Boyd as a wide receiver too, he's a flex this week and so on. Mixon though, I mean, his carry, yeah, you're off on him. He's like a rich man's Josh Jacobs, where he's getting a ton of rushing work and he's seeing more passing game usage than Jacobs is, but he's still not getting the 2-minute drill work. So he's not the passing game back. He's just getting those looks when he's out there early. I'm still going to roll with him as a high-end running back 2 in this one, just because I think he'll clear 20 touches, but he's not the top 5 guy that we hoped.
Yeah, I let me quickly look at some names who maybe I am very low on Joe Mixon this week. And I think that there are guys who I would comfortably start ahead of him. I would comfortably start Myles Gaskin, Ronald Jones, Devin Singletary, maybe even Antonio Gibson against the Giants. Like, those are all guys who I think I would rather start over Joe Mixon. I trust this Colts defense, and kind of like what you're saying is just that I don't know if the game script, I guess we haven't really seen the Colts offense be that explosive. So this game could be a little more of a slugfest than I'm anticipating, but I'm just worried that if Joe Mixon gets like stymied on 6 rushes, that Zach Taylor's going to be like, all right, Joe Burrow, fire up that arm. We're throwing 70 times, and Gio Bernard is taking the field the entire rest of the game.
I think you nailed it there, that basically Mixon's path to a ceiling game is via game script. Just because Rivers is like, I was down on him in the offseason. Then they looked great, and I was like, oh, okay, I was wrong. Now it's kind of like, I don't know.
Phil Rivers is just, I think we've realized that his struggles in the latter part in the in the LA chapter of the Chargers history, were not entirely due to that offensive line. That they were also due to Philip Rivers aging, which happens to quarterbacks. Currently, Drew Brees is aging. Big time. You can't see it, but Nick's eyes wide as saucers.
Yeah. So just on the Colts note, I mean, I think this is like the first time in a little while that we can feel really good about Jonathan Taylor, but he's still just a high-end running back too for me. The backfield usage in that group is just so friggin' split.
Yeah.
Like he does not have the reins to the offense, but against the Bengals, I think anybody can look great.
Splendid. Well, let's move on to a game in which when you play these opponents, everyone looks great. Detroit Lions heading to Jacksonville to take on the Jaguars. And both sides, both of these teams make all offenses look great. The only thing that really either of these teams is good at, Detroit is limiting opposing tight ends, which is fine. Jacksonville doesn't have a tight end, so who cares? But this feels like a fire the cannons game.
Yeah, that is disappointing. With I think Eifert's hurt right now, so even his
which is just like a bummer, man. Like you always hate to see injuries just kind of completely wreck someone's career. And Tyler Eifert went from the tight end elite to just hasn't been able to stay healthy or on the field, a shell of himself. But anyways.
Yeah. So as far as the people to target though, with Chark not practicing for 2 straight days now, Wednesday and Thursday, we suddenly have to start looking at the rest of the pass catching core. And last time, I believe it was Keelan Cole who kind of stepped up in Chark's absence. So I think he's the guy that I would be looking at to add out of free agency right now. If you're in need of a flex start, because like you said, Detroit is not good at stopping much of anything. So I would comfortably roll with Keelan Cole. Laviska Shenault, though, is of course making some more noise. So I think either one of these guys could be flexed.
Yeah, I love both those guys. On the Detroit side, I feel like I talked about this on my mailbag, which went out today. So go check it out, faketeams.com. Given that the Detroit Lions are coming off of their bye, and given how bad the Jaguars are at stopping the run and just doing anything, I feel like this is going to be the DeAndre Swift breakout game. I feel like this is going to be the game where DeAndre Swift cements himself as the clear future back and lead back in Detroit's backfield. I know that Adrian Peterson has been seeing the bulk share of touches, but we've seen Swift getting a fair amount of work in the passing game recently. And I think coming off of a bye, playing a terrible run defense, I think we could see Swift kind of announce himself and announce his presence in Detroit this week. It's my low key, like, ooh, feeling a little saucy.
It's entirely possible. I'm still the thing is he'll do that if he gets on the field, and that's just the big thing that we don't know is whether or not Patricia will roll him out there. What we do know is that, like you said, Jacksonville has really kind of struggled to stop opposing teams on the ground. Mixon cleared 151 yards. He also caught 6 of 6 balls in
which is where Swift has been operating. So even if Swift might have like a Kareem Hunt stat line of like 3 carries for 25 yards and then like 8 catches for 90 yards and a touchdown.
Yeah, if you want to boldly roll with him, I say do it. I think Patricia's just going to look at this and go, Adrian, this is the perfect time to roll him out there.
That's true. That is true. That being said, DeAndre Swift in 3 out of his 4 games, almost 40% of snaps, which isn't a ton, but like that's not too bad. Outside of week 3 only was on the field for 9%, which is shit. It's like, what are we doing here? What are we doing, Matt Patricia? There's another person who's really high on this game, and in fact, she has her start of the week from this game, and that is the Oracle. What does the Oracle have to say about this game?
My pick this week is Kenny Golladay. I sense that he is tuned into his fan base and highly motivated to give them the win with a great highlight reel moment.
There you go. That is the Oracle's start of the week.
A good pick.
Yeah, Kenny Golladay locked in as a wide receiver 1 this week, according to the Oracle. All right, let's move on. a fire the cannons game if I've ever seen one. Atlanta Falcons heading to Minnesota to take on the Vikings. Now, quick preface before we dive in and spend a bunch of time on this. The Falcons did come away with a positive test, a couple of positive tests. I know there was one confirmation, but it sounded like there were multiple reports or multiple positive tests coming from Atlanta. So that is something worth monitoring, given that it's the NFL. It seems like all systems are still a go. So they will plow ahead until the COVID test comes positive the day before or even the day of. But that is something to take note that this game might be delayed. The precedent that seems to be set is if it's a Sunday game that gets delayed, they'll push it to Tuesday, because everyone knows if you have a positive test 48 hours later, all COVID will have left everyone's system. So that's totally okay to then play a game. But I digress. I am not a doctor, Nick. You are the doctor here. So I'm sure you could talk more about that. But if this game is played, holy buckets. I mean, it is terrible defense versus terrible defense. And we are talking about two offenses that we've seen be super explosive throughout this season and are likely to continue to do so.
Yeah, it's a get right game for the Falcons offense, regardless of whether or not Julio Jones is out there. Calvin Ridley is a top one wide receiver one. Zacchaeus, man, he screwed me last week. It's still like a primetime matchup for him to get back on track though. Russell Gage, you feel a little bit better about him. And anyway, yeah, I don't need to listen to it. I guess the one player that I might try to highlight is on the Viking side of things. Irv Smith Jr. got some good usage last week. So for all you tight end needy teams out there, make sure you give him a long look. Other than that, Madison's going to smash if this game happens.
Yes, 100%. Yeah, and I love the Irv Smith shout out. The Falcons are giving up the second most points to tight ends so far this season, and I think all of this is a game, like we said, you're going to play all of the guys you have in this game. So it's kind of like, well, what, like a little something extra is if you want to get a part of this game, go get Irv Smith Jr. because everyone else has been owned in your league. Like everyone else is rostered. So if you want a part of this game, Irv Smith is your guy to do that with. Let's move on then to the Denver Broncos heading to New England to take on the Patriots. And the big news here, Nick, both quarterbacks are back. We got Cam Newton has returned. Drew Lock is back. So this is going to be an all systems go game.
Is it all systems go?
All systems go, Nick. COVID can't do anything anymore to us. Cam Newton has survived.
I'm more mocking the idea of the Denver Broncos as being an all.
Oh, the Denver Broncos are trash. They're toast.
Yeah. But it's, Cam Newton, he's back as like a top 5 option, and it's a total crapshoot as to whether or not these guys are going to have like lingering issues with COVID. We're just going to have to monitor practice reports, yada yada yada. But Julian Edelman obviously flies back into the top 15 or so at the position.
Yes, I want to quickly like pound that notion into people's heads because I've seen him ranked way too low. Julian Edelman with Cam Newton is like a locked in high end wide receiver too, without question. And the Broncos are giving up the 4th most points to wide receivers this season. So this is a prime matchup for Edelman to get back on track. I also think you can get some saucy N'Keal Harry play in there, given the fact that he leads that team. He almost leads the NFL in like red zone targets and team percentage in the red zone. So when they get down there, if Cam's not running, which he might not be because he is recovering from COVID, they might not be, they might use him more as a passer down in the red zone than a rusher. Who knows? COVID, affects the lungs, breathing. You breathe heavily when you run. Just something. Bill Belichick knows more than I. But we could see a big N'Keal Harry game too, where he, maybe goes for 40 plus yards and a touch.
Yeah, I think the Broncos, like you said, they've been really, really bad downfield. I think they've also, to receivers, but I think they've also been really bad at just stopping deep balls. So Damiere Byrd is even worth a flex if you're really in need. The backfield, I think it's Harris is the Sony Michel. Harris is going to get 15 plus carries, and James White is just going to keep being James White. The other two just look good doing it, but they're not going to get enough work. For Denver, everybody's just got their eye on Noah Fant, whether he's a game time decision. If he's active, you roll with him because he's really good. And Drew Lock, I think he was the team leader in targets while he and Lock were on the field together. So yeah, if Fant's healthy, then you deploy Fant. Other than that, What do you think of like Judy's prospects against Stephon Gilmore-less secondary?
Yeah, well, Gilmore is practicing, so he might be playing. I don't know if he's going to be playing, but both him and Cam have been practicing this week. So I was just about to say, if Gilmore takes the field, Jerry Jeudy is. I mean, I don't think you can confidently. Where do I have him? I have him ranked 40th. So like, maybe he'll give you wide receiver 4 value. I just think Stephon Gilmore. I understand the optimism about Noah Fant, but I am a little tepid about him simply because he will be the option in the Broncos passing game, but the Patriots have been really good against tight ends so far this season. Now with the tight end position, especially because teams' reliance on it is so attached to whether or not they have a really good player at that position, that the how teams do against tight ends from a fantasy standpoint can be a little skewed, because if they just don't play good tight ends, then teams probably just won't target tight ends against them. And so that skews their numbers. But the Patriots, I mean, they handled Travis Kelce pretty well when they played the Chiefs. So I would be a little worried about a banged up Noah Fant going against the Patriots, especially if they have a healthy Stephon Gilmore and Belichick knows that this passing game is going to go through Fant. We're gonna give him the Darren Waller treatment and just completely.
That's fair. That's fair. If somebody can find a better option though, right? I mean, that's what it just comes down to, because tight end just sucks.
Irv Smith Jr. Would you rather start Irv Smith over Noah Fant?
Yeah, just the Falcons. They're safety.
It's just trash. It's so it's so good. You can't say no to that matchup.
Yeah. The thing, the whatever in the room, Melvin Gordon got a DUI, so we don't know if
whatever in the room.
Yeah,
the thing in the corner there.
Yeah. We don't know if he's going to play. So if Philip Lindsay's available, go at him now. He's a 20-touch player if Melvin Gordon sits. I was able to find him in one of my leagues. Go at him. He's not going to do a ton through the air. That Royce Freeman will catch a few passes, but this is he's very, very capable of handling the rock 20 times.
Oh, 100%. I mean, he was their running back 1 last year and did put up solid fantasy numbers for them. And so if there is no Melvin Gordon, and I saw he returned to practice today, and that the Broncos might not hand down a punishment until after this week, which is really, Broncos? Really? We're going to wait until after you play the Patriots to put down a punishment?
Yeah, that's fair. But I mean, is it up to them? I have no idea. Still just fine them, right? So
yeah, the NFL might be able to hand a suspension, but that's certainly something to note. If Melvin Gordon does not suit up, Philip Lindsay is someone who you can possibly add on waivers, and certainly is worth running with this week.
Yeah, he was going 75 in a 35 and drunk. So I think that we're well into territory where the NFL
there will be something handed down, which is this is Melvin, you listen to the show obviously, and just in general to NFL players and celebrities and everyone in general. Uber.
Or stay home because it's a pandemic. Why are you out?
Also that. There are many things here that you can do to avoid this situation. Call a taxi, walk home, bike, party at your house because you're in the midst of a pandemic. I don't know. Just next time, Melvin, let's just have a house party with yourself. Play a drinking game. We will record a drinking game for you, Melvin, that you can play by yourself. We'll just have a podcast and we'll make a whole drinking game for it. So you're welcome. Let's move on. Washington football team heading to New York to take on the Giants. This game excites me, Nick, because I'm finally going to get the game that I have wanted to see from my boy Evan Ingram in so long. It's coming this week. Evan Ingram is going to put up tight end 1 numbers against a Washington defense that has been terrible against tight ends this year. And the Giants have no one else to throw the football to. So fingers crossed. Evan Ingram's never let me down before, right?
Dude, his depth of target is 4.
It's so bad.
Yards, they're just using him like he's Jason Witten. They're having him block, and it's all over Twitter. he's the lead curl route runner in the NFL. Like, he's a ballerina that should just be shot downfield every play.
It's really tough.
It's so bad.
It's so bad. Good old Jason Garrett. We love you. We love what you're doing with the team, Jason.
Yeah, as far as anybody else, it's time to cut bait on Logan Thomas. His usage is outrageous, but you can't keep taking zeros. Like, he had a touchdown in week 1, and we all really enjoyed adding him on our team after that. And now it's just you just got to cut the guy. Not going to get it done. I
wholeheartedly agreed with that. Did you watch the footage from last week's game with Washington's last week game?
No.
Okay. I was going to ask what your thoughts were on the Kyle Allen, Terry McLaurin connection, because the Giants have been giving up tons of points to wide receivers, and I would love for Scary Terry to be a wide receiver 1 this week. And in fact, I think I've ranked him as such, or maybe I ranked him as the wide receiver 13. So tops of the wide receiver 2 category.
James Bradbury's been good. That's a concern, but
that's
true.
He did really good to Amari last week.
He should still see 8 targets or more. I know he had 7 last week, but I would still be he's in my lineup.
Swag. He's in mine as well. Let's move on. Baltimore Ravens head to Philadelphia to take on the Eagles. And Nick, you do running back rankings every week, faketeams.com. Don't sleep on them. Go check them out. And I was actually surprised at how high you had Miles Sanders on your list this week.
Yeah. Surprisingly, the Baltimore run defense is only strong in name. They have yielded fantasy fruitful days to a number of running backs this season. And I mean, Sanders, he struggled to get it going last week. His box score looked great, but they committed to him. This damn team, man, their offense is just so friggin' bad. I mean, they have to invest so much more in the offensive line, but they're just going to keep giving him the rock. But if you go look through the Baltimore box scores, they're the big guy, like, Antonio Gibson, he had his breakout against them. Clyde got it done combining through the air and on the ground. Joe Mixon caught 6 passes against them. They can be had. And I think Sanders is just a high volume play.
Yeah. That's a good point. Antonio Gibson torching them was unexpected. And if the Eagles just implement the exact same game plan, Miles Sanders is about to go off. Do you trust any Eagles wide receiver this week?
Right. So I do think that I'm blanking on his name, but Fulham is Trevor. What is his? Travis. Yeah, Travis Fulham. So this dude, he was on Detroit's practice squad last year, and unsurprisingly, Matt Patricia didn't know he had a good receiver on his hands.
Shocking.
He's played really well, and last week he had 13 targets. And who the hell else are they going to throw to? Alshon Jeffrey, we have no idea if he'll play. Deshaun Jackson, if he does play, it's a couple downfield targets, and this team cannot block to save their life. Greg Ward looks like he's kind of taken over Zach Ertz's slot route role. So I would still roll with Fulham as a flex option because I think he has a good shot at seeing 10 targets. And although he might not find the end zone, that kind of volume, if he just racks up 6 or 7 catches plus his, 60 or 70 yards, that's flexible value. Ward is a lot more shaky, because excuse me. The Ravens, I think that they are a little bit more fantasy friendly to slot receivers. Anyway, he's no more than a flex option though, just because of the state of the team. The last thing I'll mention for the Eagles is just that Zach Ertz is playing terribly, and Dallas Goedert is eligible to come back next week.
Ooh. So if Dallas Goedert got released in your league, go add him. Go preemptively add him because he might be replacing Zach Ertz really soon. I personally am not touching a single Eagles wide receiver if I can help it because this, like you said, this offense sucks. And I just don't even want to deal with the pain of starting Travis Fulgham everywhere and then watching Greg Ward see 13 targets and Travis Fulgham seeing 0 targets because you know what? It'll happen. All right. Before we move on, we're going to take a quick ad break. Let's move on. Cleveland Browns heading to Pittsburgh to take on the Steelers. Chase Claypool might back up his last week's game with another monster game because Cleveland is giving up the second most points to wide receivers so far. And we know Juju Smith-Schuster, who's been practicing, is going to be a go. The question is whether or not Deontay Johnson hits the field, because without him on the field, Chase Claypool has locked in that he is that downfield big play threat. And we saw it last week, and we could see it again this week.
Claypool is running around all over the place last week. I think he's the team's X right now. Deontay Johnson suffered a back injury. Back injuries are not something that heal quickly, and I will not at all be surprised if he just is out this week. In that case, Claypool is the team's number one wide receiver. So if you need a really, really good player on your fantasy roster, and Mr. George,
he 100% endorses getting Chase Claypool and starting Chase Claypool.
I'm looking at Yahoo's numbers right now, and he's only 46% owned. This is ridiculous. Juju is just manning that number 2 receiver role. That's all he's going to be. I was wrong. He's not a top 5 receiver. I think he can still be really, really good and continue to develop. And maybe he needs to have surgery on his knee in the offseason. There's something going on there. But Claypool is going to be the number 1. He's going to smash. Juju does have an awesome spot. Slot receivers have been pummeling Cleveland, so I would fire him up too. He's a wide receiver too. This might be one of the last weeks where you can reliably start James Washington, because he's going to just get that full speedster role with Claypool operating as the X. So I'd feel comfortable flexing him as well. Last thing I'll say is real bummer that Ebron is now dealing with a hand injury and was unable to practice at least Wednesday. I haven't checked the report for Thursday, but he was kind of shaping up to be a streamable tight end option, and now he's not. And Vance McDonald proved to us last year that he is not a streamable option either.
Yeah. Are you at all tapping or lowering your expectations for Kareem Hunt facing one of the better run defenses in the league?
Yeah, but just to the extent that he's the RB7, whereas I probably
Sure.
would rank him as the RB4. One thing that we should mention is that Beckham was sent home with an illness today, and he took a COVID test, and we'll know the results tomorrow. So hold your breath and monitor heavily.
Yes, because this game might not happen then, which the Steelers would love to have multiple games delayed or canceled because of COVID.
James Conner is going to have his healthiest year.
I know, seriously. Stay healthy, James. Let's move on. Houston Texans heading to Tennessee to take on the Titans. Before we get into this game, and Nick, I would love to hear where you want to start off. And as we discuss the fantasy aspects of this game, quickly, I'd like to send a quick message to the Tennessee Titans, who seem to think that getting COVID was and the whole league being like the Titans got COVID and are screwing the league over is kind of like this chip that they should wear on their shoulder. And no one believed us. They all hate us because we got COVID. Yeah. The league does hate you because you got COVID and because you had stupid player practices that were against NFL regulations in order to keep this highly infectious disease under wraps. Let's not start bragging or putting the they don't believe us signs on the walls because we got COVID and everyone was, we were the poster child for COVID in the NFL, and now they all hate us, and now we got to show them, and we're going to use it as motivation. Let's ease back on that a little bit, Titans.
Yeah, facing criticism for mishandling a pandemic outbreak in your locker room is not adversity. So
not what we should be bragging about here.
Yeah, shove that up your ass. And Ryan Tannehill has made it way less fun to root for his career resurgence by endorsing all of this behavior. I don't know. Never put anybody on a pedestal. But okay, how are we going to have fun rooting against him?
Good moral for everyone to take into life. Just never idolize anyone. They will let you down.
We're going to be really happy though, because Will Fuller, who some donkeys are still concerned about, if you drafted him knowing his hamstrings might be an issue. He is an every week top 15 player, and he's a high-end wide receiver 1 this week. So Stephon Diggs, fellow downfield receiver, 10 catches, 160 yards. This is the same defense, the Titans defense that allowed Justin Jefferson to break out. 7 catches, 175 yards, and a touchdown. The touchdown was that 71-yarder that he just like cooked the whole field.
Mm-hmm.
So Fuller, I mean, he's being used as the X, but they're not going to just say, all right, you don't get to run your patented downfield routes now. They're going to send him flying, and this could easily be one of his King Kong games.
Love it. I like that call a lot, actually. In fact, I like it so much I'm updating on my wide receiver rankings as we speak. I also love the fact that AJ Brown came back and immediately put up numbers. He's my wide receiver 10 this week. Like, he is back in it and ready to just be a wide receiver 1 for the rest of the season. And if you listened to us 3 weeks ago, when we had our guys to buy low on podcast and we said you should try to trade for AJ Brown because AJ Brown for the second half of the season might be like the top 5 wide receiver in fantasy, you're welcome if you got a hold of him. Let's continue. Pinnacle of football being played here. The New York Jets heading to Miami. My goodness, Nick. This is the game that people, love to see. This is what the people paid for.
Yeah. So I don't know if you saw the graphic, which we'll get to at some point. Well, okay, we'll save it. We'll put a pin in it. It'll come around at some point. What I'm getting to here is that the Jets are so insanely bad that I think you might be able to start more than one Miami running back. If you just go look what they have allowed to opposing backfields, I know like San Francisco is a very different beast than Miami, but Mostert and McKinnon both obliterated this team. What Melvin Gordon did to him in week 4, it's like there are so many backs who have had outstanding success that if you were just in dire straits, I think Matt Breida could be flexed.
Wow. That is saucy. I mean, I totally agree in the fact that you should fire up. Like, Myles Gaskin seems to me chalked up for a monster game. And if you like, you're saying that this is the game script where Miami gets up like 40-10 in the middle of the third quarter, and they're like, Matt Breida, this is your time to shine.
Yeah, and the thing that I screwed the pooch here, Jordan Howard was a healthy scratch last week. And so that now that we have this down to a 2-man backfield, that's big time, right? So Myles Garrett converted his goal line carry last week. We love that. Everybody, you can go look at what Howard was doing. Every week it was a touchdown plus the single-digit yardage it took him to get to the end zone, and that's it. The fact that they finally scratched him, that's big. So now we know that it's just 2 dudes. I mean, Breida could take 12 to 15 touches, to the house against the Jets.
I completely agree. We will touch on this when we get to the Kansas City, but Le'Veon Bell released Frank Gore season. Am I right? Are we really starting Frank Gore as a reliable fantasy guy in the year 2020? I mean, the Miami Dolphins are not a bad matchup for running backs.
No, I'm not.
You can't do this to yourself?
No, and there's a lot of folks who are like, oh man, we need to go. Everybody should go sign LaMichael Pirine. He's the number 2 there. How long can Frank Gore last? He'll last as long as Adam Gase will.
Frank Gore will literally never die. Never trust Frank Gore to die.
I mean, if Le'Veon Bell couldn't get this done there, do we think that LaMichael Pirine or friggin' Gore is going to return value? Like, this isn't. I don't know if somebody's desperate and feeling lucky, you could do it, but this is just a team that I don't want anything to do with. Crowder is an every week high-end wide receiver too. Outside of him, no, nobody.
Of course he is. It's so absurd. That is just a preposterous world to live and operate in. The fact that Jamison Crowder has reliable fantasy value. Let's move on. Green Bay Packers heading to Tampa Bay to take on the Buccaneers. And I tweeted this one out. Every week I like to find a guy that I am going to hitch my bandwagon to. This week, hitching my bandwagon to Ronald Jones. Didn't realize this. Ronald Jones, low-key, having one of the better seasons for running back so far this year. He's 7th in let's not pontificate. Let's give you the facts that you came for. 9th in rush attempts, 7th in rushing yards, 2nd most 20-plus yard runs, and 7th most broken tackles. Ronald Jones has been like quietly doing it for the Bucs in this backfield, especially with Leonard Fournette and LaShawn McCoy out, and he has taken the bulk share of work there. And the Packers giving up the second most points to running back so far this season. I think that this game, I mean, these are two evenly matched offenses, so I don't really feel like it's going to be a game where Ronald Jones gets game scripted out, especially since we do know the Packers also love to run the football. So this could be like a game where I think Ronald Jones has wide receiver one upside, or running back one upside, excuse me.
I think his entire value depends on Leonard Fournette's availability. Right now, we don't know if he's going to play because of his ankle injury. One thing to note is a lot of the production generated against the Packers has been done by pass catching backs. Jones is just not doing that. That doesn't mean that he won't see a high volume of touches and can't get it done. I've got him as a mid-range running back 2 right now. But again, it's entirely dependent on if Fournette's there. Because if he misses a block or whatever, then it's like his floor is out of the game.
Right.
So assuming that if Fournette's out, I feel really good.
Anyone else in this game that tickles your fancy?
You're starting, Devontae Adams. You can't worry about him against the Bucs, but
I have him a wide receiver 3 this week.
Yeah, the Bucs defense is really, really good. So I think tempering expectations for the role players. It's okay. I will keep my Packers hate to just like one sentence, but I know they've increased their early down passing somewhat. But if this was your plan, why the hell didn't you draft Justin Jefferson? Why the hell did you why is Marquez Valdez-Scantling and Allen Lazard?
You didn't need him. Why not throw the ball to Marquez Valdez-Scantling and watch him drop it 5 times?
It's so crazy.
People love that shit.
Right. So anyway, I feel good about him. Aaron Rodgers definitely dropped a little bit in the rankings, but he will chuck it to Aaron Jones a lot. And the Bucs defense is just like pass catch city for running backs because I think it's just because the quarterbacks are just using their safety valve to evade the pass rush. But gaudy totals from pass catching backs. As far as the Bucs side of things goes, it's really like is Godwin healthy or not? Mike Evans isn't necessarily seeing his outstanding usage, and Gronk's hurt. Bucs is a lot of wait and see right now. Got to see how they look on Saturday night.
Yep. All right. Los Angeles Rams heading to San Francisco to take on the 49ers. I have sworn off, but tell me if I'm wrong. I have sworn off the Rams backfield because I don't like committees of 3 different running backs. And I know Darrell Henderson seems to be the lead guy there, but I mean, am I reacting too soon to swearing this backfield off?
No, I mean, I think that it's fine to roster pieces of it and in order of Henderson, the primary guy, then Akers, then Brown. It was nice when Malcolm Brown was recovering from his pinky surgery 2 weeks ago. Then it was like, okay, he's not catching any passes. It's Darrell Henderson, and Cam Akers had a rib cartilage injury. Then everything was great. Now we're seeing that Sean McVay wants to run the football a ton, and that he's committed to having multiple backs. It's very similar to the Fournette Ronald Jones situation. It's a situation that can blow up in your face. If you have Henderson, I'd be trying to trade him for a more reliable option. Where I do have him, he's just kind of like on my bench, and it's frightening. I don't really know what to do with him. As of now, he's the lead back, so I would feel comfortable with a flex start. But sell high where you can. And Tyler Higbee, I try to tell you guys, he is a solid like tight end 2. Is that kind of where he's producing? It's just the issue is that is by far and away not what you paid for him. Yeah, you drafted him like the 5th round. And the trends, the usage trends that we saw last year was in neutral game scripts. When things shifted, then they started going into 12 personnel. But once it was when they were winning, but then when it was neutral or losing, then it was 3 receiver time. And now they're back to that 3 receiver set. McVay doesn't know what to do outside of that grouping. Anyway, start Cooper Kupp. Yo, and Robert 100% start Cooper Kupp. Yes. Cooper Kupp's floor is extraordinarily reliable.
I actually just did this because one of the mailbag questions asked about it. Since week 1, he's averaging like 8 targets, 6 catches, 66 yards, and like every week. It's like beautiful. I will take that. That is a gorgeous floor to have. I will say I was high on Deebo Samuel last week and did not pan out. Obviously, they're still kind of easing him back. I am going to be, again, show tepid. I'm going to be nervous about both Deebo Samuel and Brandon Ayuk this week. The Rams secondary is legit. So I think it's you fire obviously George Kittle. You're never going to bench George Kittle, but I'm not starting any 49ers wide receivers where I have them.
Yeah. A tightly covered George Kittle is still like a tight, top 3 tight end.
Yeah.
The Jimmy Garoppolo situation is something we have to monitor. Apparently that high ankle sprain is really bothering him, and it's kind of crazy that he tried to come back so early. Either way, they're going to run the ball a lot, and McVay is going to be happy to allow that to happen. So, yeah, I mean, that's all he's going to want to do too.
Right. And they might have tried to run him back to try to like gain some ground or at least stay in a playoff fight, but they're the bottom of the NFC West right now, and it might be something where Shanahan is like, okay, Jimmy, you go get healthy, and we're going to they've had so many injuries that it might just be like let's let people play and let's see what we can do, but we're out of contention now, so we're not going to rush people back, which is certainly something to note. Okay, Kansas City Chiefs heading to Buffalo to take on the Bills. Obviously, we're going to start here. This is the biggest news. The Chiefs just signed Le'Veon Bell. He was released by the Jets. They just brought him in and signed. We are going to talk about this Chiefs backfield because now Clyde Edwards-Helaire gets a nice little baseball cap on his head because there's another running back there to play with them. And you tell me what you think, Nick. For me personally, I think Clyde Edwards-Helaire still retains high-end running back 2 value. I think he's a reliable RB2 for the rest of the season. The place where I see Le'Veon Bell really cutting into him is in the red zone. That's where we've seen Clyde Edwards-Helaire really struggle. Like he's had 700 red zone touches and hasn't scored a touchdown or has scored 1 touchdown. So I could see that being the role that they brought Bell into, is to be the bigger, more physical back around the goal line, which means he's going to be poaching touchdowns, which obviously puts a cap on Clyde Edwards-Helaire's value. But I don't think that if you have Clyde Edwards-Helaire, I keep trying to like abbreviate his name, but I can't think on the fly quick enough. CHE. There we go. Did it. If you have him on your CEH. See, I can't even do it when I was thinking about it. This is why I should never try new things. CEH. If you have him on your roster, don't panic. Like, I think that he still retains plenty of fantasy value. And in fact, I sent out a bunch of trades in all my leagues to people with him to try to see if I could get some people who are panicking to give him up for a little bit cheaper. How do you see this backfield playing out with the addition of Le'Veon Bell?
I also sent out trade offers to Clyde Edwards-Helaire owners in all my leagues. So I guess on a couple fronts, what this acquisition did is it just shook up the mind of whoever has Edwards-Helaire and excited all of the Bell owners. So you're not going to get Le'Veon Bell. But if you can offer some sort of decent, stable player in exchange for Clyde, hopefully you find a position where that person is lacking and just try to like 1-for-1 provide him stability. I guess you could even do a running back, just replace him. I would absolutely try. We've seen multiple running backs have decent fantasy value in Kansas City before, and they've never had one as talented as this group. And Le'Veon Bell, we can talk all about how he isn't the Pittsburgh back that he was like 3 years ago. That's fine. He doesn't have to be, because this offense, and he reads schemes guys into space constantly. And what is one thing Le'Veon Bell is really good at? Catching passes. He knows how to run routes. He can play receiver. I mean, there was talk a long time, you could just line him up as an X. Andy Reid knows how to use him. I think that it will take a few weeks, but I think that eventually this is just going to be a 1-2 punch. I think that, like, on average, Clyde, though, he's still going to be a back-end running back one, and I think that Bell is going to be a weekly flex option. Sammy Watkins, he's hurt. I think he went on IR. I don't recall why. Bell, I mean, he might hurt Mecole Hardman's value a little bit here. In the short term, though, I think Clyde is still this like mid-tier running back one. The rushing touch there, the touchdown thing is just, that's touchdown variance. That shit happens. Here's what I'm excited about, though. They have Buffalo this week. Okay, that's whatever. Denver, New York Jets, Carolina. Clyde can absolutely produce at a top 12 rate while Le'Veon Bell mixes in for high-end flex value and even sometimes a running back two during that stretch. Then it's the bye, but then they come back to Las Vegas. So Las Vegas, that's awesome. Then they have to play Tampa Bay, which is, as we talked about earlier, pass-catching back city. So PPR floor is still enforced there. Then Denver, then Miami, then New Orleans, who's been okay, and then Atlanta. This schedule, it's hard to find one that is as fantasy friendly to a backfield as this. This is a ton of just smash matchups. So if you have either of these guys, just be excited. Understand that you're not getting the Clyde that you drafted to compete with Ezekiel Elliott, but you still have a running back one in a differentiating manner that in a way that people in your league don't. So I'm not panicking. I'm totally happy with what happened here. And if this can provide some sort of breathing room or injury prevention, like Alvin Kamara kind of gets from not seeing 30 touches, that's great.
Yeah. I also think that this is a move coming off of the Chiefs' loss to the Raiders, where it was like they need to expand this offense past Mahomes, right? They're currently just living and dying by how well Patrick Mahomes plays. We saw it against the Chargers. We saw it against the Patriots, where it's like if Patrick Mahomes is like struggling or not figuring out what defenses are doing, then this offense goes nowhere. And I wouldn't like in a perfect world, this is what I want the Chiefs, like in my mind, ideal world, the Chiefs operate the second half of last year's Titans offense, where it's like Patrick Mahomes doesn't throw the ball all that much, but it's these perfect throws all over, all across the field, downfield, high value plays. Maybe he's throwing the ball only 25 times, 30 times a game. But they're super, well-constructed plays that are getting the ball down the field, and he's not missing them because he's the best quarterback in the league right now. And you have this two-headed attack of Clyde Edwards-Helaire and Le'Veon Bell to really be the bulk of what this offense is going forward. So I think this, like, from a pure football standpoint, this signing makes, all the sense in the world. It makes the Chiefs offense exceedingly potent, especially if Le'Veon Bell can tap into anything that he was with the Steelers. And round of applause for Le'Veon Bell. Le'Veon Bell, post holdout, has gotten paid, then got released by the Jets, and is now playing for the best team in the NFL. Well done, Le'Veon. Well done.
Yeah. Did you see SportsCenter was tweeting out that basically, so the three teams that Bell was looking at were Miami, Buffalo, and Kansas City.
All who play the Jets in the next 3 games.
Yeah. Nice work. It would have been fun to see him in Miami or in Buffalo, but I think as far as, this one, it's the furthest one out, so he gets the most time to absorb the playbook, and it's the best.
I guess
those are really
100%, 100% Le'Veon Bell was like, I want to play Adam Gase and just say, fuck you the entire game while I'm running up and down the field on his trash ass team. Quick, also COVID protocol. Le'Veon Bell will not be able to play this week because he needs to go through tests. So again, another round of confirmation for those Clyde Edwards-Helaire managers. Do not panic. Do not worry. Even though I just sent someone in my league a trade for him. So I am going to steal him as much as I can. Keenan Allen for Clyde Edwards-Helaire. That seems fair, right?
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, Nick. Thank you for confirming my fair trade. Final game of the week, Arizona Cardinals heading to Dallas to take on the Cowboys. For me, first of all, this is you like the King Kong phrase. This is a DeAndre Hopkins King Kong game. Holy mother of God, this game could be just utterly absurd for DeAndre Hopkins, given how bad the Cowboys secondary has looked. Do you have any sense? Is there any sense should we be all worried? How is this wide receiver room going to pan out now that Dak Prescott is out and it's Andy Dalton under center? Is there going to be a reshuffling of priorities? Are we going to see CeeDee Lamb continue to be the guy and Amari Cooper now take a back seat? Are we going to see some more Michael Gallup? I know it's one game in, or like not even. Do you have a feeling, an inclination as to how this wide receiver room might now shake out with Andy Dalton under center?
I think that all three players take a small step back, but a lot of, let me make sure that I don't offend Dak Prescott here. A lot of the success is because this offense is so well schemed under Kellen Moore. And I also think that Dak Prescott is like a top 8 quarterback in the NFL talent-wise. So I'm not trying to put him down. But I mean, the play calling is going to carry Andy Dalton. Like, Andy Dalton has always been like the as they say, the Dalton line. Is your quarterback better than him? Oh, well, then he can probably take it to the playoffs. Is he worse? Okay, not a chance. This is the best team that Andy Dalton has ever played on. Right? Like no team has been more talented than this, and no team has been more well coached than this. He's in the best situation of his life. Now he's a little bit older, but I think that they're going to be able to scheme him up to effectively game manage. And if I am at all in need of a quarterback, I am absolutely going to add him. Looking at the schedule, just 2 seconds here. I mean, Arizona, Washington, Philadelphia. You can plug him into your lineup as a quarter. Like, I think I might have him as the quarterback 13 this week. Yeah, he's quarterback 13. Yeah, I mean, I think he's just perennially going to be the top streaming option. Now he does have to face Pittsburgh and then a bye in 9 and 10. But coming out of that, Minnesota and Washington, and he gets Baltimore. But then it's Cincinnati, SF, and Philly. I mean, this is a terrific schedule, and it's not just that he has bad defenses that he's facing. He also he's facing good opposing offenses, which, it's just going to keep him throwing. Back to your original point, Amari Cooper still a wide receiver 1. CeeDee Lamb, he is still a really, really good slot receiver. Michael Gallup, maybe it's helpful. I don't know. This one's probably the biggest conundrum. Will Dalton be looking downfield more? I'm not really sure. Tyler Eifert certainly had a few good years while Andy Dalton was there. So Dalton Schultz, I mean, he was getting like 10 targets in some games. So I'm holding firm on any of these guys. And this might also be another situation, kind of like what we were talking about with Clyde, where if there's any Dallas Cowboy manager, Amari Cooper's manager, if he's a little frightened, I'd send an offer his way.
Yeah, especially since Amari Cooper just coming off of the Giants game. CeeDee Lamb, 11 targets, 8 catches, 124 yards. Imagine if the Falcons had drafted him instead of whoever they drafted at the corner. Or imagine if he fell to the Eagles. Anyways, imagine if the Packers had drafted him. Anyways, I digress.
That one is...
That one blows my mind.
It's
that
so fucked up.
Mildly indefensible. Michael Gallup, 4 targets, 4 catches, 73 yards. And Amari Cooper, 2 catches on 4 targets for 23 yards. So this is, to your point where it's like, again, that's Amari Cooper's coming off of a week in which he was not heavily involved. James Bradbury, you said, has been playing really well. That was an example of it. We've seen Amari Cooper get erased by top corners before. But you could also be worried that, like, oh no, the Andy Dalton transition has completely nuked Amari Cooper. I don't think that's true. Amari Cooper's too good for that to be possible. So yes, trying to buy low on Cooper makes a lot of sense in my opinion. And Andy Dalton, just a little quick refresher. We love to make fun of the Red Rifle. 2013, 4,293 yards, 33 touchdowns. 2016, 4,200 yards, 18 touchdowns. 2017, 25 touchdowns. Like, he plays to the talent around him. And like you said, this is the most talent that he has ever had. And he has a running back. Like, he's in the perfect system. And this is why teams should sign talented backup quarterbacks. The Eagles won a Super Bowl with Nick Foles. The Cowboys very well could make a deep playoff push with Andy Dalton because they have Andy Dalton. The Saints should bench Drew Brees for Jameis Winston. So get a talented running back, quarterback too.
I think once Michael Thomas is back, all the concerns are gone.
Because Michael Thomas runs a great slant route and can catch the ball 5 yards down the field, which is all that Drew Brees throws. Burn.
Michael Thomas is the best receiver in the NFL. The thing I want to note on the other side of the ball, though, try to tell you guys, Chase Edmonds, okay, last week, he saw the highest snap share of the season. He'd been operating in the mid-30s. Last week, he hit 45% over the last 2 weeks in half-point PPR scoring. He's the running back 11. I think that they should be using Kenyon Drake in an all-purpose manner, but they aren't. They're giving Chase Edmonds a ton of passing game usage, and now he's seeing the field more. So if you can, go add Chase Edmonds. This guy, I think that he has a very good shot at completely forcing a 50-50 backfield, and I think that it's well within his range of potential outcomes to just take over the lead back job here. It's not what I want for Kenyon Drake, but Edmonds I think he's a really talented two-way back. And I mean, if they're getting close to the same workload and Edmonds gets all the passing game stuff, that's the guy you want.
Yeah. Dalvin Cook is out. I am starting Chase Edmonds comfortably in his place this week.
Rock and roll. I love it.
If he's on your waiver, you should 100% be adding him. All right. Well, there you go. There's some hot week 6 starts and sits. All right. Well, make sure to subscribe to the Fake Teams podcast wherever you get your podcast, iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher. That is how you'll not only get us, but also our fantasy baseball and basketball podcast. You can follow myself on Twitter at PNM Rogers. Follow Nick at ginger__Nick without a K. Also follow us as a podcast at RB1 Podcast. Tweet us whatever start and sit quandaries you got. We'd love to help and answer them. Best of luck, everyone, to week 6. We will be back at you next week. Until then, peace.